Alrighty, so we are at the beginning of week 6 of the NFL season. For you today, I have my waiver wire pickups for week 6. It is starting to look really gross and really bare out there on the waiver wire, but I still have some good options for you, in my opinion, at all 4 positions. So starting off at the QB spot, I want to start off with the only QB I have, and that is Sam Darnold. As we get farther into the season, as there is more bye weeks coming up, Sam Darnold is one of the last viable options as far as I am concerned, kind of as a streaming option, bye week fill-in guy, matchup dependent kind of guy, especially for deeper leagues. If you're in an 8-man league, 10-man league, maybe you probably don't want him in either one of those. 12-man league, bigger leagues, super flex leagues, I think Sam Darnold's going to be viable, especially against certain matchups where he's going to have to pass the ball down the field more and score more points. This past week in my QB rankings for week 5, I want to say I had him at like QB 11 or 12. In those weeks where Seattle's going up against stronger offenses and their defense just can't pop off and just like dominate the other team's offense, I think Sam Darnold will be viable. Again, bye weeks, fill-ins, stronger matchups, deeper leagues, super flex leagues, probably a guy you want to pick up, throw on your bench, and stash. At the tight end position, it is Theo Johnson, number 1. When it comes to Theo Johnson, he looked pretty good in week 5 for the Giants. The biggest concern that I have is if Jackson Dart is not playing in week 6, he's not going to be that viable to start. I did say going into week 5, it was going to be kind of interesting to see how Wandell was used, Darius Slayton was used, and Theo Johnson was used. It looks like he's going to be that bigger bodied end zone, red zone target for Jackson Dart. So I think at this point in time, he is somebody that is worth stashing, kind of monitoring to see how the production and usage looks like in week 6. If it continues to trend like how it did in week 4, week 5, and continues in week 6, I think he's somebody that's viable to start in the back half of the season. The next tight end that is probably worth rostering at this point in time is Mason Taylor. We've been waiting for somebody on the Jets to kind of emerge as the number 2 target earner behind Garrett Wilson. Looks like it's probably going to be Mason Taylor. There's really nobody else on this team that's going to be able to catch targets on a consistent basis. Obviously, he's a rookie, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get the juices going and juices flowing. At this point in time, I think he's a viable person to pick up and stash on your bench for the tight end position. So the next tight end that is slightly rostered over 60% at this point in time, it is Darren Waller. He might still be available in your league. It looks like he is going to be a viable person for this Dolphins team. He's been in a snap count in week 4 and in week 5. He's getting red zone targets, end zone targets. He is being looked at as a viable option for this high flying Dolphins offense. The Dolphins defense is still horrible, which means they're going to have to pass the ball down the field because of the score, but also because they're not able to run the balls effectively with this middling to subpar offensive line. I do think that if Darren Waller is available in your league, he is worth picking up, stashing in your bench, seeing what he looks like at a full snap count, hopefully in week 6. If he's still popping off, still getting those end zone and red zone targets, he's going to be a viable plug and play tight end for you going into some of these later bye weeks where you're going to need a good guy to plug in and potentially keep around to like start him, especially in some juicier matchups as we get to the back half of the season. The last tight end I want to talk about is Isaiah Likely. I've talked about him for the past few weeks. He finally came back in week 5. He only had 1 target, 1 reception. I do believe that you could still get him for free right now after waivers clear. Stash him on your bench, see what he looks like. I am hopeful that he is going to overtake all of the targets that are going to Mark Andrews. He's going to get all those high quality touches, red zone targets, end zone targets, and I think he's going to be the tight end 1 on this football team, and that very well could be somebody who finishes, especially in 10-man, 12-man leagues, as a tight end 1 for you in fantasy football in the back half of the season. At the running back position, it is Michael Carter who has emerged for the Arizona Cardinals. I do think at this point in time, he's probably locked in as like the fill-in guy. It's unfortunate that Trey Benson ended up getting injured, but next man up mentality. He did look decent. He was involved in the passing game. As long as Kyler Murray's healthy, he's a viable starter. So if you can go pick him up, probably have to spend a little bit of fab on him, maybe burn a waiver wire spot. But at this point in time in the season, there's not a lot of good, like super long-term people at the running back spot that are going to be available on waivers unless there are injuries. But because of the Trey Benson and James Conner injury, at this point in time, looks like Michael Carter will be a viable low-end running back 2, high-end running back 3 going forward, and it could be really important for you in the bye weeks. So the next 2 running backs are actually on the same team. It's Kaimani Vidal, Hassan Haskins. They are both playing for the Chargers. Unfortunately, Amarian Hampton went down. He's been ruled out. He's going to go on to IR. Probably not going to be the best pickup of the year at the running back position, unfortunately, but somebody does have to run this ball in the Greg Roman offense. They're still attached to Justin Herbert. I know the offensive line is severely depleted, so it's not the best pickup on the season, unfortunately. It's also one of those things where it's probably going to be like a nasty timeshare where it's like a true 50-50 split, and you really don't know. Maybe it could be 60-40, but you don't know who is going to be the guy. They were almost even in touches. It was like 5-4, so it's it's really hard to predict going into the future. So probably not something for like 8-man leagues or 10-man leagues, but if you're in 12-man or deeper leagues, or if you have super deep benches in a 10-man league, I think one of these guys is worth picking up, especially if you can get them for free after waiver is clear, and stash on your bench and see what they look like in week 6. The next running back I want to touch on real quick is Kendre Miller. I've talked about him for the last couple of weeks as well. At this point in time, he is starting to look more and more explosive than Alvin Kamara. It wouldn't surprise me if in the back half of the season we start to see him get more and more carries and start to outpace Alvin Kamara. He's younger, he has a little more juice. Alvin Kamara is pretty inclined to get banged up, miss some games at some point in time, or miss a large chunk of the season. If that ends up happening, Kendre Miller again is probably going to be like a low end RB2, but could be somebody who's viable for you in like larger league formats and deeper league formats going forward. Next two running backs are kind of like fun ones to think about. It is Tajay Spears behind Tony Pollard with the Titans. Titans offense looks pretty horrible. They can't score a lot of points aside from in week 5 when they're down by a lot of points. Super weird situation. I do think that Tajay Spears has a little bit of juice. We saw like flashes of that in the end of the season last year in 2024. I believe that could carry over. It may take a couple of weeks for him to like get in the groove of things coming off of that injury. I do think he is worth stashing, putting on your bench, especially in bigger leagues and deeper leagues. I think he is just somebody that's worth picking up, seeing how he looks in week 6, in week 7, and see if he starts outpacing or maybe just kind of like vying 50-50 with Tony Pollard for the carries for this Titans football team. So the next running back is Brashard Smith. This is really only for like super big leagues or deep leagues. He is the third running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. He does look like he is getting mixed in a little bit more. He's kind of involved in the passing game. He's not getting a lot of carries at this point in time, but if there ends up being an injury to Pacheco, to Kareem Hunt, or they really kind of fall off the efficiency cliff, he could slowly work his way in. At this point in time, the Chiefs look to be kind of a top 10-ish scoring offense, which is awesome for any player on the Chiefs. The two running backs obviously haven't looked that great so far in the season, so if you're in like a super big league, super deep leagues, Brashard Smith, the third running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, is one injury away from being a potentially viable running back. At the wide receiver spot, again, talked about him for multiple weeks. Going to keep talking about him. It's Torrey Horton. He was missed on an end zone touchdown in week 5. He also did catch a touchdown in week 5. Had he caught 2 touchdowns, the world would be on fire again. The point in time where Cooper Kupp misses a few games, Torrey Horton is going to take over as the wide receiver 2 on a decently explosive Seattle Seahawks team. If you don't know who he is, go look at his stat sheet. Go look at some of the tape or highlights on the season so far for him. Not the craziest, flashiest guy in the whole wide world, but he's going to be a viable person if Cooper Kupp goes down, or if in the back half of the season he starts to outpace Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver 2 on this football team in target share. Talked about him for the past few weeks as well. Tyquan Thornton is still somebody that's worth picking up. I know that at some point in time Rashee Rice is going to come back, but we don't necessarily know how efficient he's going to look for the first couple of weeks coming back off of that suspension, coming back off of that injury. Also, Xavier Worthy continues to like get banged up, so don't know how long he's going to stay healthy or if he's going to miss more time potentially. Again, probably not somebody you're starting week over week in the back half of the season, but deeper leagues, bigger leagues, worth stashing on your bench. If Rashee Rice isn't as efficient, goes down with injury. If Xavier Worthy isn't that efficient, goes down with injury, or there's some other issues at the wide receiver spot for the Chiefs. He's attached to a top 10 scoring offense, attached to Patrick Mahomes. He's a viable stash for you in deeper and larger league formats. Another wide receiver that I'm surprised still not rostered at like 75-80%, but he's not. It's like around 40%. It is Josh Downs. He's the number 3 target earner on a high scoring Colts offense. He's attached to Daniel Jones, who's looked really good. I do believe that if Michael Pittman misses games, if we end up seeing Tyler Warren miss games, or if at some point in time Josh Downs, Danny Dimes get more and more on the same page, because the routes that Josh Downs runs and what kind of player he is, he's not so much of like a possession wide receiver like Michael Pittman. So it is one of those things where I could see later on in the season, if there's an injury to this wide receiver or tight end room for the Colts, or if he just starts, like I said, to get more on the page with Danny Dimes, he could be a viable, again, bye week, low end wide receiver 3 for you, especially if we're anticipating they're going to be in like a higher scoring game against a better offensive unit in the coming weeks. Another wide receiver that I am shocked is not rostered, 60-75%. It is Darnell Mooney. Last year, Darnell Mooney was a wide receiver 3. He has not played like a wide receiver 3 so far, but he's coming off injury. The situation with Michael Penix, this offensive unit's kind of wonky for the Falcons. I don't think that talent just vanishes away into the ether. I do think at some point in time, especially in the back half of the season, when Darnell Mooney's healthy, this Falcons offense is clicking. Michael Penix is like on board and is just like locked in. I do think he ends up emerging again in the back half of the season as like a true wide receiver 3. He may not be a high-end wide receiver 3, but for bye week fill-ins and later times in the season where people are injured on your football team and you need someone to plug and play on a potentially higher scoring offense, especially in those weeks where it's going to be a pass-heavy script for the Falcons, I think that you could do a lot worse than Darnell Mooney. It doesn't matter if you're in 8-man leagues, 10-man leagues, 12-man leagues. I think he is viable to be rostered, stashed on your bench, and wait to see how he looks going into the following weeks. The next wide receiver, I talked about him in week 4, didn't talk about him in week 5, but I'll talk about him in week 6 again so I don't forget about him. It is Luther Burden. I do think at some point in time you're going to see Ben Johnson kind of move DJ Moore more and more, no pun intended, out of this offensive like rotation. I think you're going to see more of it being Rome Odunze number 1, Luther Burden number 2. I do think because he's a rookie, it is going to take a little bit more time, but we tend to see after a bye week, which the Chicago Bears had in week 5, that you end up seeing rookie wide receivers start to pop off more and more after their bye weeks, especially going into the back half of the season. Again, it would not surprise me if we are looking at week 10, week 11, week 12, and it's like, hey, Luther Burden is number 2 in targets behind Rome Odunze. They're attached to Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, high scoring offense. DJ Moore is kind of like cast to the wayside a little bit more. Maybe he gets traded away. If either one of those things end up happening or trending that way, you're going to wish you picked up Luther Burden now, especially in 10-man, 12-man leagues, deeper leagues, bigger leagues. Like I think Luther Burden is somebody that's worth picking up, stashing, and has the potential to be like a true wide receiver 3 in the back half of the season. The last wide receiver I want to touch on, and again, he is slightly over 60%. I'm aware of that. It's like 62, 63, depending on where you're looking. I think on ESPN it's even lower. It's like 50 something. So he would kind of fall into like that weird fringy range. It is Rashid Shaheed. I'm not just talking about it because, oh, he popped off in week 5 and he looks so great against the Giants. No, it is because I told you guys coming into the season, there's going to come a point in time where Spencer Rattler is going to be more and more comfortable throwing the ball down the field. We saw it with Derek Carr in the first handful of weeks in 2024. If we end up seeing Rashid Shaheed get 2 or 3 deep ball targets, he is going to catch 1 to 2 of them a game if he's getting them, and he will break them for 50, 60, 70 yards. I do think there is a good reality that Rashid Shaheed ends up being like a true wide receiver 3, especially if we end up seeing Chris Olave go down because of concussion issues, if Alvin Kamara goes down because he's just older and gets injured, if there's any other issues from like the wide receiver or catching core, maybe it's Juwan Johnson goes down, who knows. If there's more opportunities for Rashid Shaheed, I do believe again he easily finishes as like a wide receiver 3 in the back half of the season, and if like those injuries actually do end up happening or something like dramatic happens, it could set it up where he's like a low-end wide receiver 2 in the back half of the season. So if he's available in your league, regardless of the size, 8-man, 10-man, 12-man, whatever, go pick him up, stash him on your bench, see how he looks going forward, and see if we can get some more of those deep ball targets from Spencer Rattler as he gets more confidence, Kellen Moore gets more confidence, and if those end up happening more and more, like we saw out of Derek Carr in the first handful of weeks last year, Rashid Shaheed is ready to explode in the back half of the season. Alrighty, so there is my week 6 waiver wire pickups for the QB, tight end, running back, and wide receiver positions. Hopefully this video helps you just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm going to say it now. If the lighting quality, camera quality, microphone quality isn't as good as it was before, I did recently move, so it's going to be adjusted and fixed. I will have more time to do that once I am not working every single day during this week to readjust everything and make sure it's perfect. If it looks better, sounds better, lighting's better, then I did it on purpose and it's perfect. So you can tell me thank you in the comments below. I will have my DST video down here once it comes out. It should come out later today once this video is posted. So if you want to pick up a good quality DST streaming option in week 6 before the waiver wires close, and you want to put your $1 bid out there, or you know who to pick up once waivers clear at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and you want to go be that guy, that video will be down here for you below as well. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. And until then, y'all have a blessed day. Bye.